everybody, it is Romania Black, and we are on episode 3 of the Apothecary Diaries, and ooh, last episode was really good, involving MaoMao, our girl, getting to detect some poison in the head concubine, or the Emperor's favorite concubine. We can't call her the head concubine yet. His favorites food, and to also figure out and solve a mystery with the army that was happening with poison, and basically reaffirm that MaoMao knows what she's talking about, and she's kind of the Walter White of anime. Maybe a little bit, maybe a wee bit. And Jinshi is like starting to take notice, being like, she's not like the other girls who are easily wooed by my presence. And Gaoshun, I like him, the other head eunuch that works with Jinshi. He's a great foil to Jinshi. He's a great, like, it's weird to call him a straight man because he's a eunuch, but I think that the label more or less applies to he is the kind of everyman to Jinshi's extraness. Put it that way. And then we've met the 3 other maidens that work alongside the head handmaid. They're great. Their names are gonna take me a little bit to get, but we'll get there. I'm just amazed I remembered Gaoshin. His name gave me a lot of trouble last week. But I want to say first and foremost, this series, not only getting me to research new things, I haven't read the book I was talking about last week yet. It's in the process of getting a hold of. Support your libraries. Go get a free book from a library. Don't pay for that shit. And then the other thing was this episode, last couple of episodes have been talking about like makeup and toxicity and poison. And so I got online because I'm kind of trying to get into, I don't wear a lot of makeup anyway to begin with. Maybe just some like skin tint, some powder, throw some lipstick on, we're good. But I want to try to get into something more healthy, and this series has kind of shown me that there is like a lot of toxic chemicals in makeup back in the day. Guess what? They're still in your makeup now. So online, I'm gonna have to go to work because I saved it at work, but there is an app online that I was looking at trying to get clean makeup, and there was actually this group that's trying to foster sustainable makeup and spreading awareness about the products that go into the things you put on your face every day. And so they had this checker that would go online and check the ingredients, and come to find out, like, the powder I've been using has like a toxic talc in it, and I was like, oh well, that sucks, so I'm gonna stop using that now. So yeah, but this series has kind of made me more self-aware that a lot of things we take for granted and just use on a daily basis, the people making them don't care if they hurt you. It's just a business. So I'm like, oh shit. So it's made me a lot more aware. I'll find out for episode 4 what that checker is called, or I will put it in the description. I probably will edit this video and put it in the description below where you can find that article talking about that checker. So if you're a woman that get makeup products, this little extension goes on your browser and it will give you like a little alert that will go through and tell you the ingredients in the makeup that you're buying, and if any of them are banned in certain countries, if any of them have any carcinogenics in them, if any of them have like toxic chemicals that if you ingest could be poisonous. I'm like, yeah, but it's kind of crazy. This series, watching it, has made me more aware just in the first couple of episodes, and made me go, oh, maybe I should take better care of that. So hopefully you all will too. But yeah, I'm like, huh. So just spreading the awareness, but I will put a link down below to that article so that you all can see it. But it just made me kind of like mind-blowing. But yeah, so I'm really enjoying this series. MaoMao is a lot of fun. I like the Sherlock Holmes business of it. It's great. I still feel like the pseudo doctor, the quack doctor, is working for Lilu, whatever her name is. She's the other concubine, and I feel like there's going to be tension there. And I have a feeling MaoMao is going to possibly be framed for something she didn't do at some point in this series, and Jinshi's going to have to step up and maybe stand up for her, and that's going to be interesting to see go down. So yeah, but with that being said, I appreciate you all watching me and enjoying the series, and I'm excited for your comments down below. But we're not gonna waste any more time. We are gonna start episode 3 of the Apothecary Diaries, and we are gonna do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Okay, so rule of 3, we're good. I didn't see the need to bring out Whiteboard Coon for this because this was a pretty straightforward episode. There's a lot of really good elements to it, and a lot of fun, and a lot of Jinshi being Jinshi, and I love Gaoshan. He's great. I love him. The assistant, I love the dynamic he's building with MaoMao, and he's kind of like the mediator between the two of them because he gets both of them and he's like, oh my God, I'm stuck with these two. I'm like, get a room. And MaoMao doesn't even realize it. We're going to talk about it. But there's a lot of really good stuff in this episode. A lot. And I'm really glad of how it subverted it, because at the beginning I was like, oh, this is going to be a really sad episode with a sad consequence for Fuyao. And for her, no, she ends up having a happy ending. And it's like, girl, I was waiting for something bad to happen. And then the episode was like, no, it's going to be fine this time around. I'm like, oh, okay. Cool. So yeah, so we'll start out this episode. Again, gotta have the disclaimer. So Jinshi comes out and says that she's going to be a reward for this military official who is basically being rewarded with her during this battle. The interesting thing is she runs off and you think that she's really distraught by it, and we'll talk about that here in a second, but the fact of the matter is she's elated that her childhood friend is basically like a knight in shining armor to come get her away from the palace and take her home. So that's really interesting. The question that I have is, did Jinshi know? Because here's the thing. In the scene with Jinshi and Gaoshan's in the dark. He's in the shadow, and he looks kind of like sad about it. Like, oh, this poor woman, she's getting sold off to a military officer that she doesn't know. But Jinshi's in the light. So I'm like, did he know all along and he was testing to see if MaoMao could figure it out? If she knew too? I feel like he kind of like gets off on testing her and then having her be like, ugh, and he's like, oh, she just hates me. Like, what a masochist, what a sadist. But yeah, anyway, so she, then her dancing on top of the roof, as a means of, please come home and make sure that you get here to take me away. The one shot that is a little misleading is they make her teeth look almost a little crooked at the beginning, like she looks like the Ring, but it's very intentional, and hell, we don't see close up of her teeth any other time soon. So we get this little dialogue with the three, our Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather equivalents, being like, we've been at the capital for a while, but the morning cold is still hard to get used to. I miss the sand and the sunlight back home. The morning and nights were cold west as well, and they're like the western capital. So we find out that Gyokyo is from the western capital. They're in the central capital right now. And then where the military officer and Fuyao are from the east. So they've all come from different places across the country, and they've all ended up in this central location, right? And then they talk about a little bit of politics here, saying it feels like a long time ago. And they're like, Lady Gyokyo's palace entry feels like yesterday. Saying, my father gave me some good news. So just like with MaoMao, or rather, interestingly enough, MaoMao doesn't seem to be in contact with her dad right now. But these ladies seem like they've been in contact with their dad. So I don't know if that just comes with the territory of the higher up the ladder you work, the more direct contact you get with your family or not. Or if they're treating this, since they're handmaids in waiting and not concubines, they kind of get more freedoms with that. I don't know. But she said the trade between the Western and Central capitals is on the rise. And they're like, well, the emperor really does love Lady Gyokyo. And it's the family's home of the emperor's favorite concubine. Surely the central officers can't ignore that. So yeah, they're like, we're going to split up the work or we'll never finish it. We can't rely on other servants. And so then they talk about, before we're going to talk about the emperor here in a little bit, but they talk about that when Gyokyo-ku was pregnant, there was a time there was a poison needle in her dress. Like, not only are they poisoning the food, they're poisoning her clothes too. So nobody, which is so insane. Gyokyo is really sweet. Like, she's genuinely a nice person, I feel. But people, because she's a political outsider, which we're going to talk about in a second, she's being targeted. And then they say here, in this conversation, part of it is likely because she's the princess of a foreign land. It's fine. We have one extra lady in waiting now, don't we? And then we cut to MaoMao. So okay, so both Fuyao and Gyokyo-ku were princesses of their own countries, But the reason why they're concubines and not royal escorts is because they're outsiders. It's not like they were princesses within the country, of noble families within the country. It would be like if, and we're not talking modern times, we're talking like 1800s, if the Princess of England married the Prince of Venezuela. Like, let's just say that. Like, because the Prince of Venezuela is an outsider, it wouldn't be exactly considered to be like marrying within the nobles within the country, right? It's not marrying in-house, basically. So the thing of it is, because the emperor took a princess as his concubine, she has a little bit more political authority to her, and she has a little bit more political pull with her, right? Because they're getting these two capitals to start trading again. So there is a little bit more stakes with her being a concubine than just a random woman from within the country that he was like, you're pretty, I want you to be one of my wives. No, she's from a foreign country. She has political authority attached to her. So her being the emperor's favorite concubine is kind of a big deal, because it could lead to political relations with these two countries. So it makes a lot more sense now why she's been targeted. Because at first, when they were talking about targeting and poisoning her, I'm like, aren't there like other concubines the emperor has? But the fact that she's tied to something political, and the officials probably have a stake in that, makes a lot more sense now. So I'm like, okay, now we're getting somewhere. And the same thing with Fuyo. The fact that she was a princess from another country makes a difference as well. So that all makes a lot more sense. So we cut to MaoMao in the kitchen, and the one handmaiden's like, what are you doing? She's like, oh, I'm making a cold remedy. And she's like, wow, you're just really talented. You can do a lot of things. And then she sees the hand with the bandage. And of course, the handmaidens all think she's been abused and, mistreated in her previous life. They have no clue she's testing poisons on herself. And she's like, no, I'm fine, honestly. And my dog's trying to get me to play with him, but he'll have to come up with a better means. And so then I like that the one handmaiden tries to talk about the rumor of what's going on. And MaoMao, the thing about her is she has no interest in gossip, people gossip, relationship gossip. MaoMao's like, I could care less. But she mentions a ghost, and MaoMao's like, you have my attention. Now you have my attention, because it could be something to do with ghosts and spooky things. But then she's like, oh, it's just a ghost story. She's like, yeah, they basically are rumors that the moat around the castle is filled with the corpses of concubines that tried to escape. So she's like, how is this different than any other ghost story? Come on, I need some more juicy details. But then when she says that they think that she could be sleepwalking, she's like, oh, so this could be something medicinal. Now I'm interested. I don't know how to feel about the quack doctor, and I'm going to say why in this moment here. It's not brought up, so maybe it's not a big deal. Maybe it's fine. But he acts really, really friendly around her all of a sudden, and last episode he didn't like her at all, and there's not been that time frame that we know of to show that they've developed a relationship. So either, one, he's being suspicious. I've read enough Chinese Danmai to be suspicious. Or two, he's being nicer to her because she's making him medicine and she's doing work for him. And maybe that's it. Maybe he realizes that she's making medicine for him and he's like, oh, I can use her to do my work. We're just best of friends now, aren't we? The only thing that's kind of suspicious about that is that when she comes over, she's kind of skeptical of him. And she's just, chopping the herbs and everything. She's like, why is he so laid back? He brings her 2 teacups. It shows him with 2 teacups and 3 cookies. If Jinshi showed up, that should be enough for them both. There's 2 teacups. They can split cookies. We should be fine. But the moment that Jinshi, he hands her the teacup, as if he's going to drug her or poison her, because she's not questioning it. And then Jinshi's like, oh, can I have some too? And he's like, oh, well, right away. And then takes it away and brings it back. But he still brings it back with 2 teacups. So I'm like, I feel like he was trying to possibly drug her. And Jinshi caught it and was like, nope, leave her alone. Or give her a laxative or something. And then he went and swapped it because he knew he was going to get caught. Maybe, I don't know. They don't ever go into detail with it. So who's to know, right? But But yeah, so Jinshi is just all, it just cracks me up how much he tries to he's trying to use the smolder on her to seduce her. And he's doing everything in his power to flirt and win her over. And she's like, yeah. And then she is trying to push him off, but her pushing him off just eggs him on more. So it's like, she can't win either way. Right? I love that her cattail in that moment gets plussed And she's like, does this guy have nothing better to do than to come bother me? Shouldn't he be at the domestic service department as a eunuch? But he's wandering around the palace like he's on surveillance duty. She's trying to figure out, what is his deal here? He seems like he's pretty on the up and up and high up in the food chain. Why is he here? Why is he not doing duties like a service, in the service department? Why isn't he helping the emperor closer than that? Why is he running around the palaces? What's he doing? So then she comes to the conclusion. She's like, oh, he must outrank the matron of the serving women. And he's just like, now to be fair, him being like, does present a stereotypical air about him. And she's like, he could be the emperor's guardian, but he's too young for that. Unless he's risen up the ranks really quickly, and she doesn't think he's capable of that, which is funny. And he's there with this smug peacock look. And then she's like, oh, maybe he's the emperor's personal favorite. She's like, maybe the emperor's bisexual, likes it both ways, and he's the emperor's favorite eunuch in that sense. And she has kind of a tongue-in-cheek moment with it where she's just like, maybe that's the case. Maybe that's what it is. And then he's like, are you thinking of something inappropriate right now? And she's like, no, what are you talking about? So I like this moment because we don't know Jinshi's sexuality. We don't know if, he's a eunuch, but that doesn't mean anything. That does not mean he's homosexual at all. He very well seems to be not the case. And I like that MaoMao kind of maybe hints at that, and he's immediately like, what are you saying about me? So I really hope that this series gets into if Jinshi's into women, if he's into nobody, if he's into men, what do we get with this? If he's just, not into anything at all. I hope we get into that conversation because this show has a sexual vibe to it where it's not afraid to talk about those things and it's not afraid to talk about romance. So I'm hoping we get into that. MaoMao comes across to me like she's demisexual, if I'm being real. She seems to have there's a little part of her heart that's etched out for romance and love, but she's kind of the person that she's like, my love takes on different forms than the typical lady. She's like, I love medicine. I love creating things. I love helping others. She's like, I don't fawn over men or fawn over people the same way that others do that are my age. And my view of love is a little bit more complicated. So do I think she could find an attachment with Jinshi? Probably. Do I think she might? She might. But Jinshi's also I like how complicated both MaoMao and Jinshi are in terms of their attraction and what they like. It's not straightforward and stereotypical, which is fun. It makes it like a guessing game. It's trying to piece together that puzzle as well. So Jinshi asks for now there's 3 cups. Why are there 3 cups now? There's only 2 of them. I don't know. But now there's 3 cups of tea, so who knows. But he sends him to go find some medicine. And MaoMao's like, what do you really want? And that's when he's like, have you heard about the haunting? So who knows? Who knows what Jinshi's interested in? And she's like, and what about sleepwalking? And she's like, oh, sleepwalking, that's interesting. He's like, oh, I got your goat. I got you interested in something. And then, of course, she's like, well, and that's when he tries to put the smolder on her, being like, how can it be cured? And she's like, you forcing yourself on me and trying to be seductive is not going to do you any favors, sir. And he does it because he wants her to glare back at him. He's putting on the smolder even more because he wants that reaction from her. And she's like, I don't know. There's no medicinal cure for somnambulism. No. And he's like, well, is there any cure other than medicine? And she's like, my specialty is medicine, not anything else. And he's like, well, that's too bad. And then they sit there awkward for a second, and then he comes down like a puppy, being like, that's truly too bad. And she's like, ugh. And she's like, yuck, he's persistent, but he is glowing. He is loving her glare. She's just like, ugh, Why are you, like, she looks at him like he's an insect, and he loves it. I mean, this man wants MaoMao to have a dominatrix whip in hand with her foot over his chest, pushing him down like he's an ant. He wants that. Like, he is into that. And Gaoshin's like, can we stop? Because it's creeping me out. I love Gaoshin. He's so fun. He's just like, but yeah, she's like, I'll do my best. So Gaoshin takes her out. I like that she says he doesn't come off like a eunuch, which is very interesting. I'm like, is Jinshi the only comparison that she has? And so she's like, he doesn't seem like Jinshi at all. I feel like Gaoshin's being a eunuch was punishment. I don't feel like Gaoshin comes across as the type of person that became a eunuch to advance politically or for his own agenda within the palace. I feel like Gaoshin might have been a military official, might have been a prisoner of war, might have been someone that was castrated as punishment, and here he is. And so he's just making the most of it. Whereas Jinshi, to me, and of course we don't know anything about either of them, so I could be totally off base. Jinshi, to me, strikes me as a character that chose to castrate himself for political gain, for reasons, and he did it for his own agenda. Whereas Gaoshin seems like that was not the case. So, but we don't know. I like Gaoshin, though. He's like this big, gentle giant. He's very sweet. MaoMao is also a very tiny, petite female character, which I really like. She reminds me in a sense of Akane from Psycho-Pass, where she's just this petite, short woman that has all this power packed into her, and I like that. And he keeps calling her Lady MaoMao because he's trying to be respectful and polite. Again, he's like Ushijima from Haikyuu. And she's like, you don't have to call me lady. Like you're way higher than me on the ladder right now. And then he's like, what about Zhao Mao? And she's like, so you immediately cut from being respectful to giving me like the most childish nickname. Because Zhao in Chinese, based on reading the Danmai that I have and watching the Donghua that I have, Zhao is like a kid nickname. You say like Ah Zhao or something, like when you're like, oh kid, hey kiddo. Like it's kind of that equivalent. Where he's like Zhao Mao, and she's just like, really? You just sharp turned into that nickname? Okay. And then he says, can you stop glaring down at Master Jinshi like he's an insect? When he asks her, he's like, please stop. And she's like, oh no, he knows that I do that. But he's not asking her to stop doing it because it's mean. No. He's like, when he returned earlier, he told me ecstatically that you stared at him like he was a venomous caterpillar. And Gansha was like, look, it's not that it's mean that you're doing it. It's that he's getting turned on by it and it's creeping me out. Please stop. He's like, you're not helping. He's like, maybe if you stop doing that, he'll leave you alone. And then she's like, ew. She's like, I'll be more careful. Sorry about that. She's like, I'm sorry you had to witness that trauma. I'll stop now. That is so funny. I love it. But then he says there's something else to it. He says, if someone unprepared saw him like that, they might pass out. Like, Gaoshan knows that Jinshi is very attractive and that the smolder doesn't work on MaoMao. She is immune, as Gaoshan is. But any other woman in the palace would be turned on by that and would possibly like be instantly like enraptured. And Gaoshan knows that part of Jinshi's job is to do surveillance and to see which women are not loyal to the emperor and use it to kick them out. So Gaoshan's like, I don't want a woman getting persecuted or getting kicked out unfairly because Jinshi's throwing a look that could woo them. I'm like, good for you, Gaoshan. Good for you trying to protect these ladies. I appreciate it because I think he's kind of like, I don't think he likes what Jinshi's job is in that regard. He's kind of like, this is not fair to these ladies. And I think that as a eunuch, he would understand, like, it's the idea that you have to be celibate, but yet, like we have with Fu Yao, the emperor's not touched her. So, you know, I mean, I'm on a spectrum where that doesn't bother me. Not having sex, not having intimacy doesn't bother me. But, you know, I'm one person. A lot of people, you know, not having sex, not having intimacy, not having physical contact, you know, the phrase touch starved, you kind of would start to get cabin fever after a while and be like, I just want to be with somebody. And so at the first chance that someone offered you that temptation, it would be very hard to resist. And I feel like maybe Gao Shan realizes, I don't think Gao Shan's attracted to Jinshi at all or to men, but he's like, yeah, it's hard if you can't do these things. And suddenly someone's putting an apple in front of you being like, oh, do you want it? Oh no. So I respect Gao Shan a lot. I think he is a very cool character. I like him in this. And then MaoMao's like, well, to each their own, I guess. I love that MaoMao is like, oh, women would find that attractive? Okay. I want Jinshi and MaoMao to be together as a couple, but I also respect that the story is taking its time, and I hope it does, because I really feel the connection between the two of them. But I feel like MaoMao and Jinshi, their relationship is basically going to be like, I'm grossed out by you, and I love it. So they go and see her, and yeah, she's beautiful. Like Fuyao in the moonlight, she looks gorgeous. A moonlit cotton rose. Like, she's just so pretty. And I love the way they animate her. Like she's sleepwalking. She's scheduled to be bestowed to a military officer as a reward. I love it. Meanwhile, Jinshi is watching out the window, like waiting to hear back and see what's reported back to him. Like, is she going to figure it out? Is she going to solve the case? What's her verdict going to be? I feel like there's a moment where Jinshi is looking out into the moonlight and Gyokyu is looking out into the sunlight, and they feel like two sides of the same coin. They both feel in some ways after this episode like they are potentially trapped there in that palace in the roles that they serve. But on the other hand, they chose to, it's weird to say chose, but we don't know Jinshi's story, right? We don't know his story. We don't know his ambitions, his agenda. He seems to be making lemonade out of lemons the best that he can while he's there. And Gokyoku is kind of the same way. I feel like she's in an interesting position because the emperor loves her. Like, she's like, I shouldn't feel bad because the emperor does legitimately love me. And that, is something that not every concubine gets. I'm not just here to have a baby for him. He actually cares about me. But there's also a part of Gokyoku that's like, I didn't ask to be in this circumstance. It happened and I was forced to be here. I'm making the most of it. But, there is a part of her that's like, is it bad that I feel envious that she gets to be with someone she genuinely loves? There's a little bit of Beauty and the Beast kind of, I've talked about this in another reaction for another series, like about how in Beauty and the Beast, a lot of people say that Belle kind of like ends up with the Beast because of Stockholm Syndrome. No, I don't agree with that. And I talked about this in Scumville and Self-Saving System, where it's one of those things where Belle is imprisoned by the Beast. He's an asshole. And then she leaves on her own volition. And then she's about to get attacked and he saves her and then gets injured. And she's like, well, shit, I'm a nice person. This guy just risked his life to save me. Fine, I'll heal your wounds. But she calls out and tells him he's an asshole. And it's like, if you don't change your way, I'm leaving again. Okay. And then he changes his ways and becomes a better person. And it's like, oh, that's all we needed to do. And she kind of falls in love with the better person that he becomes. So in a sense, this kind of feels like the situation of, whereas like Belle was imprisoned in the Beast Castle, Gyokyoku is imprisoned in this big fancy palace with all the amenities and, the candelabra and everything taken care of her. But it does feel like he falls in love with her like the Beast falls in love with Belle. And as long as the emperor is nice to her and treating her well, making lemonade out of lemons, I guess. So she doesn't have it bad, but I definitely can feel where I understand how she's like, I wish that I could have the fairy tale romance that Fuyo has, where she gets to fall in love, where the person she fell in love with is the one she ends up with. And here Gyokyoku is like, I don't have that. The person I could have fell in love with as a child is not who I'm with. And she's like, and I can't really feel bad because I'm in a pretty damn good situation. You know, aside from the assassination attempts, she's like, I'm in a good position because he loves me. Could be a lot worse. So it's like, ugh. And so I find that interesting that you see Jinshi and Gyokyuku both staring out wistfully out the windows. So the doctor says it's been 2 years that she's been there. She's a timid princess. She's supposed to be a skilled dancer, but she stumbled at her first showing. And the emperor hasn't laid a finger on her, and she shut herself up ever since. That is some commitment. The fact that she's basically shut herself up for 2 years waiting for her term to be over and for her to go somewhere else. And that the emperor hasn't, I think that speaks a lot for the emperor that he hasn't touched her. I mean, you could look in one sense of being like, oh, he didn't care about her. But also, despite her stumbling, he could have done a lot worse. So I feel like she's just been biding her time to get out of there. Some things can't be avoided, but like she intentionally stumbled so that he wouldn't think she was as good as she'd been presented as. Now we saw the emperor get up in there and walk past, and he walks past her in that moment, but I want to get a screenshot of it. I guess he's the one that comes to go Kyoku in the end. But I'm sure she doesn't want to go back. What does he say? She's a princess from a small vassal state. I'm sure she doesn't want to go back. And MaoMao's like, oh, wait, what? Go back? And he's like, oh, yes, she's from the Eastern Front. And I'm like, no, she would totally be down for going back if it meant being with the man that she loved. Like, yeah, no, I think that she'd treat that perfectly fine, actually. I do like when they talk about being given away to a military officer. And Gao Shan's very respectful. He's just like following along, listening to, seeing what she's going to say and how she takes it. Yeah, I feel a lot for these women because one, the idea that you have no autonomy, you're trapped in this palace for years of servitude against your will. Sure, you get paid, but you have no freedoms practically. It's just like you're in a prisoner inside of a nice, pretty bird cage. But then the idea that not only do you either get violated by someone you don't care about, but that you get sold off to be violated by someone you don't care about that's not in a pretty fancy palace is a terrible concept. So I'd feel horrible. Like Fuyo gets the best ending out of all these scenarios. She gets to not only be with someone she cares about, but they're childhood friends and he loves her. Like you can't write a better ending to your story than her getting to be with him. She's just buying her time. And Gao Shan's like, yeah, she looks a lot different from when she's dancing on the wall. She's just very timid and trying to be nondiscreet. I like that we get the idea of the cotton rose, that it's the Fuyo flower, and then it turns pink in the evening and then turns back to white. It changes its appearance. And she's like, yes. I love the two of them just trying to figure out things. And I also like the idea of Gao Shan kind of looking at MaoMao like maybe she's like a cotton rose, where she appears to be this gruff and like no nonsense, like I don't care about anybody. But then when you peel back the layers, she does care. And she does want these people to end up having happy lives. And she's not quite what she seems. And Gao Shan's just kind of looking at her like, I don't know if Gao Shan is developing any feelings towards MaoMao, but I think he's developing respect towards her. Like he respects her as a person. He's like, okay. And maybe he's like, oh, Jinshi, I can see why you like her. And Jinshi's like, what? Like her? What are you talking about? And Gao Shan's like, I see it. I could see why you would. I love it. I love how that scene is very show not tell. Just showing Gao Shan looking down at her being like, all right, I see how it is. So anyway, they talk about the spirit story. And she's like, and then she says, I like that she looks at her pinky, like her pinky finger, like it's just a speculation. Like my dad would say not to speak up based on a speculation. But she's like, I'm pretty sure this is the case. And she looks at the pinky finger and talks about love. And so I'm curious to know, like, did she make a pinky promise with somebody with this finger? Did she make a pinky promise? Did she promise somebody something would happen? I'm curious to see what we get with that whole looking at her pinky sort of thing. But I also like that she doesn't speak up to Jinshi or the others because it's just speculation. And she finally tells Go Kyoku once Fu Yao's leaving, because at that point she's like, well, she's leaving, I might as well say it because it's not going to change anything now. But I think that's interesting. So then she talks about the sleepwalking and just basically explains that it's just nothing more. She's seen people sleepwalking before because they're stressed, and that's all there is to it. And Jinshi, I think, knows that there's more to it, but she's not going to say anything. And she's like, the purchase offer was rescinded and the sleepwalker stopped. And then she's like, the offer was made by a wealthy merchant, but he had a wife and child and he had grandchildren, so she didn't want to go with him. And she only had 1 year left of her term, so she just wanted to wait it out. And I feel like it's interesting that we cut back to Go Kyoku with her daughter in that moment, because Go Kyoku she seems like a very conflicted character to me, because I feel like there is part of her that maybe laments coming here in the first place, and laments being forced to stay here and bear the emperor's child and do all this, and feels like it was a political move. But then maybe there's another part of her that has grown to like him, and then she has a daughter, and she's like, I love my daughter, so can I truly be selfish and be mad that I'm here when I have this life in front of me that I care about, and it wouldn't be possible if I hadn't come here? So I feel like there's a lot of conflict with her character right now. Like, do I feel happy here? Should I feel guilty that I'm happy? Like, there's a lot of emotions going on, right? And then, of course, she's like, maybe Fu Yao was the same. And then Jinshi's like, is that really it? Is that everything? And he's waiting for her to glare back at him. He's like, come on, is that everything? And she's like, yes, that's it. And he's like, really? And she goes to make a face at him, and Guanshan's like, no, don't. You're making him happy. Stop. He's like, he's got sparkles coming out of my eyes. He's like, stop. Stop. You're gonna get him turned on, and then I have to deal with that. It's gonna be weird. Stay calm. And then, yeah, she leaves. I like that Jinshi looks back to Gaoshan like, did you make her, like, not glare at me? And Go Kyoku's like, something else is up. Something else is going on. And so they won't let her leave her room. And she's just waiting out till that moment when she can leave. And Go Kyoku knows that something is up. She's thinking about something. And so when she leaves, she finally asks, what's going on? As she watches her leave the place. She's like, you can tell me the truth. She's like, I won't tell anyone. And she's like, well, I'm the one that asked, so whatever you say, it's okay. She's like, this is just speculation. But she's like, the woman who turned down the first offer later received another offer that was half off. And because she was ill, the price was cut in half. So basically, she did all the sleepwalking so that the old man wouldn't purchase her. But come to find out, it was all an act of fraud. She was feigning illness so that when the old man said no, the person that owned her put her off as half off, and then the next man that came, that was her true love, who didn't have the money to pay full price, got to take her back with him and get her out of that place for what he could afford. And so that was the deal. That was the fraud. That was the Ocean's 11 scheme that they put into place. She pretended to be sick to get half price on the bid. So Fu Yao, their childhood friends who grew up in the same homeland, the man showed valor in his battle against the barbarians the other day. And so he was the one given to her as a reward. And he specifically asked for her as the reward. Not money, but asked to rescue her from the palace. And I kept thinking something bad was going to happen. Somebody was going to find out and stop her from opening up those gates and seeing him. And then he's like, when asked what he wished for as a reward, he specifically asked for her. And MaoMao's like, he must have fantasized about it even before he left home. So it's so romantic. MaoMao's like, it's a perfect romance. She was a princess. There was no way that a common man who was just friends with her, probably from the inner court where she was from, but he had no chance of ever getting with her because she was a princess. And so whenever she was taken in as a concubine by the emperor, he went to battle being like, if I can do well in battle, maybe I can ask for her. And it's like they schemed up this plan. And then she got to where the emperor didn't want to favor her, and she was viewed as lesser goods, taking advantage of the system and playing it. And then he, who got military, who like used this as motivation to be with her, like ended up getting to where he's like, now I can take her away from that place and we can be together. Whereas before I couldn't be with her because she was a princess and she was above me. But since she's a concubine now and not viewed as high up, I can be with her. Making lemons out of lemonade, right? He could never, as a military officer, he could never propose marriage to a princess. But now that she's a concubine, there was a chance. Yeah, and so we see she didn't attract the attention of the, and yeah, so it is the emperor walking by. Yep. And now she's scheduled to be given away. But it's possible. The barbarians' conflict took place at the Eastern Gate, and she was wishing for a safe return. And then her opening up and seeing him, and we see them like look at each other. And yeah, that face where she's like, it's you. Yeah. And of course they act so nonchalant. He's like, well, hello. Yep. You're somebody that I don't even know. Everything's fine. She's like, would it make me a terrible woman to say that I envy her? Yeah, she gets the perfect romantic in fairy tale. And they go in the carriage and then, yep. And she's like, no, I wouldn't say that you'd be wrong to envy. And then it shows like the montage of them back home together. Like them together at her palace, showing them like, yes, like hugging each other. And then when they get in the carriage, like him being with her. Oh, it's so damn romantic. I love it. Oh, it's so sweet. And then of course Jinshi finds out everything because Guanshan was listening then to the speculation. Yes. So it is a little bit of, you know, MaoMao knew that this was possibly a fraud and she didn't say anything. So what is Jinshi going to think about that? Because technically she should have spoke up and stopped it from happening, but she didn't. She let it go because it wasn't her business and it wasn't her job as an apothecary to make speculation that's outside of medicine. So technically she did nothing wrong. That was just her own rumors. And I love this line. The line, if love makes a woman beautiful, because we see that she did look so beautiful in that moment. If love makes her beautiful, what kind of medicine would it make? And we see the little pinky, like I want to know what's up with that pinky, why she's doing that. But if love makes you beautiful, what would love do for medicine? Being like MaoMao saying, like, if I loved something as much as she loved that man and it made her bloom into something, what could that love do to me making medicine? And I feel like MaoMao already loves making medicine. Like, she already loves helping others. But she's like, what else, what medicine would love make for me? Like, what would it do for me to help? So, character development. We'll see if it happens this season. Who knows? And then we see, yeah, Gyoku looking out the window. Same as Jinshi. And then we see the Emperor coming up. He looks okay. He seems fine. I hate that beard. But I know a lot of men had the beard then. He has the very deep, authoritative voice. Yeah, I feel that, you know, if he shaved that beard and mustache, he'd be a very handsome man. Girl, I don't like facial hair on guys, so I feel you. But he wants to see a request for the apothecary. Interesting. So what we gonna do? That is the question. But I really, really, really love this episode. This was a great episode. The romance, I'm here for it. I'm here for Guanshan and for our girl MaoMao getting closer as friends, for Jinshi getting put in his place for his antics. I'm excited. I'm very excited to see episode 4. So I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yes, I'll be back very soon with more of the Apothecary Diaries. Bye!